The entire ballroom fell silent at the exact same moment. Crystal glasses stopped clinking. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the orchestra faltered as every pair of eyes turned toward one impossible sight. 7-year-old Grace Harper, the little girl every doctor had declared permanently paralyzed below the waist, suddenly pushed herself out of her wheelchair. Her tiny feet trembled against the polished marble floor. One uncertain step became another, then another, until she broke into a run with tears streaming down her cheeks, racing toward an ordinary-looking single father standing quietly near the entrance. Across the room, billionaire entrepreneur Victoria Harper stood frozen in disbelief. Her heart stopped as she watched the daughter who hadn't walked in 4 years throw herself into the stranger's arms, whispering words that made the color drain from the billionaire's face. "I knew you'd come back." Before this incredible story continues, take a second to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who still believes kindness can change lives, and subscribe to the channel if you believe every person deserves a second chance. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to life. Victoria Harper had built one of America's largest technology companies from nothing. Her headquarters overlooked the skyline of Chicago, Illinois, and magazines called her the Iron Queen of American business. Investors admired her fearless decisions, competitors feared her relentless determination, and employees respected the impossible standards she demanded from everyone around her. Yet none of her billions could fix the only thing that mattered. 4 years earlier, a devastating highway accident had taken the life of her husband, Michael Harper, while leaving their only daughter, Grace, with a severe spinal injury. Specialists across the United States, from Boston to Los Angeles, had delivered the same heartbreaking verdict. Grace would probably never walk again. Victoria emptied fortunes into experimental treatments, private rehabilitation centers, robotic therapies, and world-renowned surgeons. Every failed attempt quietly stole another piece of her hope. Grace, however, rarely complained. She carried a gentle smile that seemed strangely larger than her tiny body. She loved reading stories about heroes, rescuing injured birds, and drawing pictures of families standing beneath bright blue skies. Yet every evening Victoria found her daughter gazing through the bedroom window, as though waiting for someone who never arrived. Whenever Victoria asked what she was thinking about, Grace simply smiled and changed the subject. There was one memory she never shared completely. 3 years earlier, during one particularly difficult rehabilitation program in Colorado, Grace had met a maintenance worker named Nathan Brooks. To everyone else, Nathan appeared to be an ordinary handyman raising his young son alone after losing his wife to cancer. He repaired broken equipment, fixed leaking pipes, and quietly disappeared before anyone noticed him. But Nathan treated Grace differently. Instead of seeing a disabled child, he saw a brave little girl. Every morning before work, he encouraged her to keep believing that healing wasn't always measured by medical reports. He taught her breathing exercises, simple balance games, and small movements that slowly strengthened muscles doctors had nearly given up on. Most importantly, he never promised miracles. He simply promised never to stop believing in her. Victoria barely noticed him. Billionaires rarely paid attention to maintenance workers. After several months, the rehabilitation center changed ownership, Nathan left without explanation, and life moved on. Grace cried for days after he disappeared, but eventually buried those memories inside her heart. Unknown to Victoria, Nathan Brooks carried a secret heavier than anyone could imagine. Before tragedy shattered his own life, he had been one of the United States military's most respected rehabilitation specialists, working alongside elite recovery teams helping wounded veterans learn to walk again after catastrophic injuries. His groundbreaking techniques challenged conventional therapy methods, but politics inside the medical system destroyed his career after a failed operation involving a powerful senator's son. Though investigations later proved Nathan wasn't responsible, public blame ruined his reputation. Ashamed and exhausted, he disappeared into ordinary life, determined never to practice medicine again. He devoted himself only to raising his son, Caleb, believing his past belonged in silence. Years passed. Victoria organized an enormous charity gala supporting children's hospitals across America. Politicians, celebrities, business executives, and journalists filled the luxurious hotel ballroom. She wanted the evening to inspire hope for thousands of struggling families. Even though privately, she had almost stopped believing in hope herself. Grace attended beside her mother, smiling politely from her wheelchair while cameras flashed endlessly. Nathan had no intention of attending. His small construction company had been hired only to repair damaged lighting equipment before the event. He planned to finish quietly and leave before the guests arrived. But a last-minute electrical issue delayed his departure. Wearing faded jeans and a plain navy shirt, he stood near the service entrance waiting for permission to disconnect one final cable. That was when Grace saw him. The world around her disappeared. Without thinking, she gripped the wheelchair handles, stood up using strength no one believed she possessed, and stumbled forward. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Victoria screamed her daughter's name, convinced she would collapse. Instead, Grace continued walking. Then she began running. Nathan looked up just in time to catch the child throwing herself into his arms. For several breathtaking seconds, nobody moved. Grace clung tightly to him, crying with pure joy while Nathan fought back tears of his own. Years of hidden pain collapsed into one unforgettable embrace. Victoria hurried toward them, unable to understand what she had just witnessed. Doctors surrounded Grace, checking her legs, expecting muscles to fail at any second. Instead, she remained standing. Reporters immediately raised their cameras. The billionaire demanded answers. Nathan gently explained that Grace's recovery hadn't happened in one miraculous moment. It had begun years earlier with hundreds of tiny victories everyone else overlooked. Every finger movement, every improved balance exercise, every strengthened core muscle had quietly prepared her body for the day her confidence finally overcame her fear. The accident had injured her severely, but fear had imprisoned her even longer. Tonight, seeing someone she deeply trusted unlocked something inside her heart powerful enough to let her body attempt what her mind had believed impossible. Doctors argued it wasn't scientifically that simple. Nathan agreed. Healing never was. He explained that physical recovery, emotional resilience, and hope often worked together in ways medicine still struggled to measure. Grace had never truly stopped fighting. She simply needed one final reason to believe. Victoria listened in stunned silence. Then came the revelation that changed everything. One elderly neurologist recognized Nathan's name. Within minutes, whispers spread through the ballroom. Phones searched old newspaper archives. Former military records surfaced. Guests slowly realized the maintenance worker standing before them had once been considered one of America's brightest rehabilitation innovators before becoming the victim of political sacrifice. Victoria felt overwhelming guilt. She remembered barely acknowledging him years earlier. She remembered assuming his opinion carried little value because of his uniform and job title. She remembered choosing expensive experts over the quiet man who genuinely cared. For the first time in decades, the billionaire realized wealth had blinded her more effectively than poverty ever could. Over the following weeks, Grace continued improving beyond every medical expectation. She still required therapy, patience, and determination, but each day brought stronger steps and brighter smiles. Videos of her miraculous walks spread across social media, inspiring millions. Yet Nathan refused every television interview, every book deal, and every offer promising fame. He only wanted to return home to Caleb. Victoria wouldn't allow his story to disappear. Instead of offering him money, she asked him to help create something far greater. Together they established the Harper Brooks Recovery Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping children whose families couldn't afford advanced rehabilitation. Every child would receive treatment based not only on medical science, but also on emotional encouragement, family support, and human dignity. Nathan accepted on one condition. No building would carry his name. He wanted every child entering those doors to believe healing belonged to them, not to the people who helped them. Months later, the foundation opened its first rehabilitation center outside Chicago. Families arrived from every corner of America carrying hope that had almost disappeared. Grace welcomed each new child personally, proudly walking beside them instead of sitting in a wheelchair. Whenever frightened patients doubted themselves, she simply smiled and said healing often begins long before anyone else can see it. Victoria changed too. She remained one of America's most successful business leaders, but employees noticed something different. She greeted janitors by name. She listened carefully to interns. She visited hospitals without cameras following her. She finally understood that greatness wasn't measured by how many people served you, but by how many lives you quietly lifted. Nathan's greatest joy wasn't public recognition. It was watching Caleb proudly tell classmates that his father was a hero, not because he had once worn a military uniform or appeared on the news, but because he never stopped helping people after the world stopped believing in him. Years later, Grace would often visit the exact ballroom where everything changed. Standing confidently on her own 2 feet, she would look across the polished marble floor and remember the impossible journey from despair to hope. Visitors always asked where her miracle began. She never pointed toward expensive hospitals. She never mentioned billionaire wealth. She simply smiled toward the entrance where one humble single father had once stood unnoticed and answered that miracles often begin the moment someone believes in you before you believe in yourself. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need hope today. Your support allows these inspiring stories to reach people who need encouragement the most. Special request: before you leave, please comment with one word: hope, if you believe kindness and second chances can truly change someone's life. Sometimes the richest person in the room is the one who carries compassion instead of wealth. And sometimes the greatest miracle isn't that someone learns to walk again. It is that another human being refuses to stop believing until they do.